Speaking of Black Undertogas.
I'm resident of following for YouTube. Joel Sands. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to do episode 2 of Claudius. I do have something for you interesting here for you guys. So Brian Blessed lasted 6 episodes as Augustus.
Yes.
Margaret Tyson lasted 9 episodes as Antonia. George Baker lasted 10 episodes for Tiberius. Obviously, the longest was Derek Jacobi for 13 episodes.
Yes.
But Brian, why does it feel like Brian Blessed lasted longer? Is he just the most impactful here?
Well, I think for me, these episodes are also the densest. They have a lot of information. I mean, for one thing, he's terrific, and they have a lot of information in them. And he had probably in those episodes has a huge amount of screen time. And so I think it's all this, like what we're not looking at is how many minutes do these different people get. And I think if you compared the number of minutes that they got to each other, you would see Brian Blessed has a lot.
Yeah.
Not as many as Sean Phillips, who probably has the most.
She drives the van in almost every episode. So she's
and you have to keep in mind historically, Augustus was the first full Roman emperor. Julius Caesar was kind of he called himself imperator, which was basically leader, but Augustus was the first full. So, and because he is Claudius's, I think, grandfather or great grandfather, you need that history leading in, because this is where we first see young Claudius. So, and plus, Brian Blessed is a treasure. I am not going to have you badmouth Brian Blessed, Joel. Okay, maybe you can complain about he's got too much time, but you know what, Joel, you just keep Brian Blessed's name out of your damn mouth. Seriously.
Julius Caesar was a hit with critics, but he was deemed too intellectual by the MDC executives, and so that's why they ordered a second emperor, Augustus, with more love and action scenes.
Yes, it's true, and more bombast and vocal self-assuredness.
Can you imagine Brian Blessed as a starship captain back then? Holy Christ!
Shields down!
It's like so a lot of this episode is about getting Brian Blessed's characters, Augustus' daughter, caught in the act of like cheating on her husband.
Doesn't take much.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the second
every day, several times.
It's like trying to catch the sun rising.
Right.
We got to sneak up on it. No, you just have to wait.
Yeah, but there's also the subplot involving Tiberius and his astrologer.
I love that. I never lost faith in you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I never lost faith. I'm just going to have you thrown off this hill here.
And the beauty of that,
throw him off the cliff, and then it's like I never lost faith in you. It's great
because he was not as charismatic or as handsome or whatever as Brian Blessed, and because he kind of just has a look that intrinsically makes you uncomfortable, no matter what part he's playing. Like he was in several James Bond movies, different characters. Nevertheless, George Baker didn't get enough credit.
No, it's true, and he really evokes a sadistic attitude without even really trying.
And yet, you can see him find himself self-shaming over that. He has moments of genuine reflection where he realizes who he is. For instance, when he's getting the death report on the island.
Yes.
And he hears about the drowning and the guy swimming for, 2 miles.
Yeah.
And that's just a little masterclass. There's a whole thing just focuses on his face.
Yeah.
And you can see, it's so modulated. You can see him effortlessly doing a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, and he's doing it through this whole idea of this outburst of laughter, and the levels are taking place within all of that, where he's having these explosions of laughter, but then he's having, oh yes, okay, tell me now, please, and then, like you say, you'll see levels. So
It's a beautiful moment of
Yeah.
TV acting. It's
Yep.
really good.
Yep.
I always
And by
felt
TV acting, I don't mean TV level acting. I just mean acting that's on TV.
Right.
I always felt George Baker with his character came into his own with the first episode we watched too, because when his brother dies,
It didn't take him long.
yeah, he looks at his mother. He's like, "Oh, did you mourn my brother?" And I love the way he looks at her and gives that line is just gold. And right there, he decided right there at that moment, I'm causing my own exile. He did not give two shits.
What, Jewel? What did you think of the wrestling scene? You knew it had to be asked.
I've seen better wrestling in ECW. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
It wasn't. Listen, it wasn't with two actual wrestlers with people who had experience, but it was.
Well, neither is most professional wrestling that you see on television.
It was. I'll say this: it was what it intended to be, very amateurish. That's what I saw, but that's how it's intended.
Did you enjoy that there was a wrestling scene? Did you call
Yeah,
a family in?
Look, anytime you get two actors who have to perform that type of physical act and are not really probably familiar with it in their own right, sure, because you see.
Yeah, but what about the wrestling scene?
Joel, I think the question that Patrick is trying to ask, and let me see if I can articulate it. Did you wish it were Alan Bates and Brian Black?
Yes. We all secretly wished that was happening. But Alan Bates.
No. I'll tell
seen
you,
Women in Love? That should be your next movie.
No, I'll tell you what. The scene itself, the wrestling scene you're talking about in the first episode, I know we're talking about the second episode. What I mean by amateurish, it's with two actors who have no experience being pro wrestlers. They're just actors, but they're doing the best they can in what they're supposed to be doing is amateur style wrestling, which that's what they're really doing. Really, if you think of, they're not pro wrestling.
This isn't Ultimate Surrender.
Yeah,
no, right. They're not. They're not
nobody's
fake wrestling, like throwing
wrestling.
fake punches or elbows like you see in WWE, formerly WCW,
because it's classical
ECW.
wrestling.
They're more amateur wrestling, like what you see in high school.
Yeah, because it's classical wrestling. It's your traditional sports wrestling, not pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's not entertainment. So
Joel, tell us, did you secretly wish you were Ellen Bates and Oliver Reed?
No.
Your mouth says no, but your eyes say
no.
At that convention, you made us take turns.
Oh my god! No, but I'll tell you what. I wish it would have been who was it? Sean Phillips and Patricia Quinn. That's who I wish it would have been. There you go. Because why not?
Submission hold would have been a poisoning.
That's the first lascivious reference to Sean Phillips on YouTube ever. We're here. You are here, folks.
Somewhere in England, she just sat straight up in bed.
Well, she's also supposed to be on this week's episode of Doctor Who, so I think Jewel was trying to slip a little promotion there.
No.
Which episode of Doctor Who is she in?
No, she's going to be in this Saturday's episode.
Coming up? You mean like the new episode?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I didn't know that. Okay, with episode 2, there are some good plots in here. They're trying to set up catch Brian Blessed's character's daughter in the act of sexual activity, even though her husband's banished. And also, like you guys said about Tiberius, he's waiting to go back to Rome, even though he knows Augusta doesn't want him there. My favorite scene in this episode is even though she gets her caught in the act, she gets records of it. Augustus still refuses to bring him back. At first, it's like
At first, that's right. And the final convincing happens off screen, because by this time we know that Livia is a master of engineering these kinds of things. This episode really kind of proves that about her. It really establishes, you sort of get the sly side of her in the first episode, but here you actually see her working, her practicum.
If she had been brought over with Operation Paperclip, if Livia had been brought over and was put in charge of the moon landing, we would have been there in 6 months.
Yes, it's true. But there would have been a pile of bodies.
That's right. That's how we would have gotten there. It just would have been a bridge.
Bridge of dead opponents.
Should have been so proud.
That's right.
But they were Etruscans, so it doesn't count.
It doesn't matter.
so.
My favorite Etruscan king, Tarquinius Priscus.
What did you guys think of this episode, Gordon?
I loved it. I mean, my favorite scene was the one where Augustus has just found out that his daughter's been sleeping around with all the senators.
Oh,
And they filmed it brilliantly, and you could see that Augustus is like, he's seething, but he's not visibly seething. Where he goes to one, he says, "Did you sleep with my daughter?" And one says, "No, not exactly sleep." "Oh, did you do it on a couch, on a ledge, on a bench?"
Standing up. Yes.
And then he goes to another person and he says, "Did you sleep with my daughter?" "Only once." "Only once." And then he pauses and he gets to the central, he's in the back and there's the ring of senators, and he throws the scroll down and starts screaming. Like, it's, and you can tell it's like they're going off to, that at the very least, they're either going to Roman prison, being maybe being sent to be a gladiator, but usually they did that with poor people in Rome.
Yeah, they probably exiled these dudes. They probably, you could exile.
It'd be curious to find out what happened to them, if it happened at all. But because it feels like his anger is more aimed at Julia.
It is, and that she does get exiled. I mean, she gets banished. So
yeah, because she's pounding on the door saying, "Daddy, don't send me."
He's all wrapped up.
Yeah.
I think it almost would have been a greater insult to her if nothing had happened to them. Mm-hmm. And it would have been very Roman in terms of their views of gender.
Yes, it was a man's world in the parlance of James Brown. So
I was listening to an interview with Brian Blessed where they were showing, he was explaining they wanted to show where his character gets killed. They wanted to show Rome dying on his face. And that's not in this episode, but he said, "Yeah, I can do that." So
Brian Blessed can do everything, Joel.
Yeah.
He can do anything.
He can have all of Rome die on his face. Le Petit More.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
More. But one thing that nobody has mentioned is the fact that the great British actor Simon McCorkindale is in this.
Yes. I love Simon McCorkindale.
Man,
he was almost James Bond, and he would have been a fine James Bond.
Would have. He was.
Yeah, but the reason I didn't bring it up is that I think Jewel would have. Sorry about that, Alan. The reason I didn't bring it up is I figured Jewel would ask, "Who's Simon McCorkindale?"
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Jewel rhapsodized about Simon McCorkindale to me. Sometimes late at night, just calling me. "Patrick, you watching Simon McCorkindale right now? I'm watching Jaws 3D. He's great. He's a shark hunter. Richard Matheson screenplay." Okay.
Let me ask you that question. How much do you think he got paid for Jaws 3D?
Simon McCorkindale?
He probably.
It was probably more than he got for Manimal.
Probably.
Well, here's the sad. His character is key to that story if you've ever seen it, but he's not exactly the top billed star either.
No.
You know who had the Manimal premiere tie-in? Corporate. I love this. It was Orange Julius.
Oh, God.
And because I was going to see Trading Places back when movies were still in theaters for months. And I was going to see Trading Places, and I went down to the Orange Julius, and they had all this Manimal swag.
Yeah.
And they had buttons and so on and so forth. And I was really torn. Which should I be doing? I felt almost disloyal.
I was listening to an interview with one of the guys who opened, Pumping Iron, which was like a TV show once upon a time. And he was on, the guy who was interviewing Sasha Mitchell, he was on the show Manimal, and they said either him or who was the star?
Simon
McCray.
Well, no, the other guy. I'm thinking of the wrong show. There's a show where they were under the water. The guy
you mean Sequest
from Atlantis?
No, yeah, the Atlantis.
From Atlantis?
The Horton Footplay young man from Atlantis.
The guy from Dallas who was in that.
Oh, you mean Patrick Ewing?
Yeah, Patrick Duffy. Yeah.
Robert. Yeah. Sorry,
Patrick Duffy.
That would have been a whole different show.
They were talking about he was talking about how he had to throw Patrick Duffy in the water, and it was funny.
They threw him in a shower, and an entire year disappeared.
It's true. For both of the shows.
Oh my God.
Actually, the entire series disappeared.
Now, his co-star was Alan Fudge.
Yeah.
Look it up on Man from Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then, of course, Victor Buono, who is his arch nemesis. In the water, Victor Buono is a very skinny lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Victor Buono, the poor man's Thayer David.
Mm-hmm.
He was enormous. There are stories about the amount of fabric they had to use to swath around him as King Tut. Yeah. And the costumer had never seen anything like it. Victor Buono died when he was very young. You know, Victor Buono was a guy who always looked older than he was.
Yeah,
he was 44.
Yeah.
He died.
Very young. He was, brilliant, but he was a troubled man.
Yes, he was. I got to see him live when I was 7 in the touring Dracula.
Oh, cool.
With John Gavin as Dracula and Victor Buono as Mina. No, Victor Buono as
the Seward?
As Van Helsing.
Oh, Van Helsing.
Yeah, he was a hell of a Van Helsing. He was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene from this episode?
Augustus confronting the senators.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's so funny and so painful.
And layered, and
yes,
and the supporting actors do a brilliant job as he builds down the line. All of a sudden, they all just go, yes.
Well, and it has something that Claudius would do a lot, and it does it again in this episode in that scene I was talking about, where there's essentially the messenger speech, and it's that they take their time in their scenes, but their scenes don't necessarily feel long, and you can take any 20 seconds from those scenes and assume you know how the rest of it's going to go, and then it goes someplace else.
It goes somewhere else. Right.
It is really good.
Yes,
really good.
You know, later on in this series, we're going to get a lot of nudity. I like how we don't.
All right,
no, I like how we don't get nudity in this episode because they do.
If you don't like nudity, you just cover your eyes.
They do. I don't mind nudity, but I also like when they don't show nudity because it's this scene's done very tastefully. They dim the lighting. They do it in like a silhouette almost. It's very nicely done.
Wait, which scene are you
talking about? The scene, I think, is what he's
just from a production standpoint, it's very smartly done. Because if you either A, can't show it, or B, just don't want to show it because the actress isn't willing to show her body, I can appreciate that. So,
well, the BBC doesn't want them to at this particular point until the show becomes immensely popular, and then they say, "Okay, go ahead and show a little." You know,
they're going to show some later on.
Writers, directors, and producers pushing the envelope with standards and practices is a time-honored tradition. So.
Mm-hmm.
True story. USA Network when Monday Night Raw was on the air. They told writer Vince Russo they didn't give a shit what he put on TV.
Was this during the Attitude Era?
And he lived up to it.
Yes, yes, it's true. It got to the point where we started seeing Vince McMahon's incest fantasies. That was bad, man. That was bad.
I'm not watching wrestling that often.
This was back in the late '90s, early 22.
They're the most highest rated wrestling, and they can't even come close now.
Was Vince having fantasies about his Uncle Ed?
No, they're with wrestling back then. I want to be clear. A lot of the wrestling you see with Vince's fantasies, there was an episode where John Cena has attested to this. He told John Cena, "Smack my daughter on the ass," but that was not the Attitude Era. That was after.
No, that's after. That's well after.
So then there was him cheating on his wife with supposedly Trish Stratus, which was just laughable when you think about it.
It was Trish Cumulonimbus that he cheated.
And that wasn't even really, that was like sort of post-Attitude Era-ish. So they tried.
But given some of the stuff that's come out about McMahon in the past year,
this is where it was coming from. Absolutely.
I followed none of this. What has come out about Ed McMahon in the past year?
Ed McMahon, yes. Well, Ed McMahon is still dead, but Vince McMahon might as well be at this point. He's had to give up sexual harassment.
Assault, a little bit of extra disgusting that I can't say on the air.
Right.
Really?
There was a lot of stuff that went on with certain women, particularly women that were like neophytes in the business, where they were being literally pimped and passed around.
Oh no!
Yes.
You know what one hasn't been exposed that they really fuck. Well, it sort of has and it sort of hasn't. Paul London somewhat confirmed this because he was dating her at the time, Ashley Massaro. That Ashley Massaro told Paul London, who was a pro wrestler at the time, he was dating her. She told him, "I don't like going on the airplane ride with Vince." And he's like, "Why?" She goes, "There's just stuff that happens on there that you don't want to know about."
Sleazebag. So, but anyway,
not since Edward Mulhare and William Daniels.
And she ended her life, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, the reason I know about the Attitude Era in particular, I mean, I was a wrestling kid when I was small, when it was all real cheap stuff, shot on videotape and kind of flat. But in the Attitude Era, I went back to college and I was doing comparative analysis papers in theater history. So I did a comparative analysis paper on the WWE in the late 90s. Compared to bread and circuses, Roman, and particularly Roman entertainments. And it's amazing how well it fit together.
I was covering Lepetamine
in
the equivalent classes. Lepetamine was my guy.
Yeah. You know where the inspiration for the Attitude Era really came from?
Lepetamine. No.
No, do you know?
No, I don't. I don't.
Really, the person who's most, and Russo has said this, the person who inspired him was Eric Bischoff when Eric Bischoff created the NWO. When Hulk Hogan turned heel and they created the NWO. So, but because the Monday Night Wars were already a thing before the NWO ever formed. So, just Hogan joined WCW and stuff like that.
You served in the Monday Night Wars.
I watched it as it happened.
Right now.
I watched it as I started watching wrestling in 1988.
So you accuse Harry Bischoff of being responsible for this?
No, Eric Bischoff. He's on Twitter. Go follow him.
Well, he's got to be good.
He's on YouTube too. He's got a channel. 83 weeks.
You'll
learn something.
One of my neighbors will give you an Eric Bischoff for a quarter.
With or without lubrication.
Well, you know what he
I
you know what he
Claudius.
was before he became the producer of Nitro, don't you? He was a third string announcer.
Yeah, he's an announcer. Yeah, but I mean, he'd been a writer long before his face ever showed up.
So
So,
what's the dirt on Gene Okerlund?
Mean Gene. Well, it's about 6 feet of dirt on Mean Gene, actually.
He passed
What do you got on him?
He was he was
He
a
was
heavy
he was an
alcoholic.
SOB at craft service.
He was a heavy alcoholic.
Good.
He was a shill for anything WWE or pro wrestling. He would plug anything. No offense to the late Mean Gene Oakland. I can understand
His
why
job.
he did.
I mean, it was literally his job.
Yeah, that was his job. Yeah, he did his job. So I can't knock him really. I mean, he did anything they asked from a plug standpoint.
What? Hold on, Joel. I only heard 2 words in that sentence.
Okay, if they asked Mean Gene Oakland, hey, we need you to plug this, he'd plug it like that in a heartbeat.
And I do mean plug.
Yeah, he would.
In every sense of the word.
Yes.
There was an interview with him and 2 other people. I forget who the 2 other people were at this moment in time. But literally, WWE was literally just released something, and he plugged the shit out of it.
I
See,
couldn't have
wanted to see
released it
Grand
that
Wizard of
easily with a
Wrestling,
plug.
the orgy scene in episode 2. That's what I wanted to see. Okay.
Okay, so back to I Claudius, guys.
Yes.
Thank God.
His battles were like bloodless drills. Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, back to I Claudius. Like I said, I like the lighting of the scene where the sex scene they have because it's tasteful. It's tastefully done. So the production team did a really, really great job with it. Now there's some other scenes that will come later on. But I do agree with you. The senator scene is funny. It's hilarious.
I like the way what they did with Claudius in this whole thing, where he's running around looking for the scrolls at the beginning of it, and then he's a child because he's looking back, way back, 60 or so years, whatever it is at that point, and then at the very end of it, he's suddenly inserted into that.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. And it's such a slick piece of television storytelling that's just pure Lumiere brothers. I mean, it's obvious that they swapped out one actor for the other, and did it without a cut. But they also changed the timbre of the water sound effect a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a little thinner and a little weaker as he's sitting there watching it. Wow, how heartbreaking! Derek Jacobi manages to get so much out of it without saying a word.
Yeah, it blows my mind. He was only 38 years old when he did this. I mean, he was actually, Brian Blessed was about 38 years old when he did this too. And they were able to, stretch their relative ages so effectively. I mean, there wasn't a huge amount of makeup used. With Blessed, I saw a little bit of latex they put on his neck to give him a little bit of waddle.
Yeah.
And the gray in the hair, that kind of thing. And with Jacobi, it's a little bit more elaborate, but still, it's not ridiculously.
Well, here's a question: how old was Augustus when he died, and how old was Claudius when he died?
Claudius was fairly old. I think he must have been at least in his 60s, which would have been incredibly old in those days.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Augustus.
But that could be another reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Augustus's virility is so important to this whole story. Gordon, what were you going to say?
Yeah, Augustus was about 77 years old.
Okay, cool.
And Claudius was about 64.
And he quite possibly would have lived older, except it's probable that he was poisoned. Probably.
Or he lets himself be poisoned.
Well, that's in the way that they present it there. That's kind of the way it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Somewhere in one of the day books, I have a reference to putting on the manly gown. I talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a painful moment. I mean, I'm getting ahead, but wow. And just the loving resignation that Claudius has towards Britannicus.
There, he looks at them. He looks at the food.
Oh, then later, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in the manly gown sequence where he's just
okay. Yeah.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
You haven't lived until you've worn women's stockings and dressed as an elf. There you go.
Keep your personal life out of this, Joel.
This was another of those Caligula school plays that you did.
Yes, it was.
Which is very Caligula.
Actually, it was a
great scandal because he forgot to wash his tights between.
Actually, it was a Christmas play for the Catholic Church.
So you did Caligula for a Christmas play at a Catholic church?
That's awesome.
I'm not surprised.
Caligula in the manger.
I'm not surprised.
No, I was playing an elf for Santa's Workshop.
So you were an elf named Caligula at a Catholic church Christmas play. Okay, that makes sense.
Caligula had time traveled and disguised himself as an elf.
Oh my God, Caligula! Listen, dude. Is that your favorite character, Gordon?
Well, it's your favorite character. You're the one who's always talking about playing him in school.
Oh, sweet.
It went to Capri 102.
Yeah.
Was the name of your school?
No. I had two different elementary schools. There was St. Mary's Catholic School, and there was Clark Elementary School that I went to. For the elf play, that was at St. Mary's, and the other plays I did were in 5th grade. That was for Clark Elementary with my history teacher, formerly history teacher, Mr.
Inmate.
Mr. Elias.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now in the Chomo section of state prison.
Yeah. I played the drunk in a couple of those plays, or I literally fell flat on my face.
You would have had to be after the things they demanded of you.
That's right.
I didn't demand much.
I'm not doing this sober, Chief. I'm telling you that right now. It's the Chavarsky School of Acting for me.
Hey, drunk is how I got through 5th grade.
It's true. Those little thermoses came in handy for all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my Transformers lunchbox.
That's right.
Yeah, sure.
Transformed you, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why the hell not?
It's one of those kits that you would open all the barware in it, but it would transform into.
Hey, if you mix vodka and powdered Jello, you know.
That's right. Intoxicus Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And for those of you who are under 18, don't try anything we suggest at home. Just don't.
None of it.
Oh,
I didn't know about the Jello though.
Well, now you do.
What's something about this episode that shocked you guys when you first saw it?
Oh, the brutality of just Augustus and how casual he is about it. That it's just the way of the world, the way of doing things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was gonna have him executed, but he's such a likable little chap.
Yes, that
little chap is the king who's causing all the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there are several scenes. I think the first time you see it, where you realize that these people are incredibly politically sharp, but they're also depraved in their politics and their interactions on behalf of their family members. And you also realize how complex the all of this maneuvering is. It's like French court, you know.
Yeah.
It's all these people maneuvering to get themselves or their children into position to be the next emperor or the next whatever.
Isn't it wonderful that little Posthumus is totally aware of how precarious his position is at that age?
Yeah,
you have to live with that dread, that knowledge. Oh, the poor guy.
Yeah, it's a chilling moment.
Oh.
He actually knows what a homicidal business it is.
And Herod Agrippa drops the Vorta business of everything's wonderful. I'll just talk my way in, and it's like not anymore.
Really? Yeah.
He's a cool character who doesn't get enough, I think, appreciation in this. Is the character of Herod Agrippa, who's for the different acts, it's a brilliantly consistent performance.
Yeah, it's a nice.
That kid is just right in line.
Yeah.
With what's later done, and And then, Hair to Grip is horrible. And it's, which I didn't see. Talk about that may be the most
Didn't see
shocking thing in
coming.
the whole series.
Yeah. I think as the series went on, you certainly got more of those sort of shock treatments.
Ron Guignol.
Yeah, because you get prepared for it through the intrigue and through the various things and conversations, and then all of a sudden here it is.
Suddenly there's a dead infant,
right,
as a prop.
Yeah.
There's a severed head as a prop.
Mm-hmm. And it's then you're in the reality of it rather than just in the planning stage. You begin to realize that. So it's pretty well done that way.
Is Miriam Margolyes the poisoner?
I don't fucking remember.
She looks like her.
Do not remember. I call her Miriam Gargoyles.
Well, funny you should mention that, because you know what Miriam Margolyes' off-time job was? She looped porn films.
Oh no!
And she had the best vocalized sound effect in the biz, and would do it at parties.
Right.
To entertain people. They'd get a few drinks into Miriam, and hey, Miriam,
yeah.
What'd you do today? Can you recite the lines? Oh, I sure can.
Groan, moan, etc., etc.
True story.
Yes, yeah. I believe this about her. She is not on beam. She is always sort of, she will do and say stuff. It is just not, she doesn't do what's expected of her, and I guess I can respect that much. But she's also ridiculously crass and socially unacceptable at times.
But a great actor.
Oh, absolutely.
Holy cow.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that's why I call her Gargoyles. Gargoyles. She's totally rude and crude at times. But yeah, she's had a great long career, and now I know another layer that, like I said, though unsurprising, is enriching in terms of the image of her.
So speaking of which, Gordon, how many actors in I, Claudius showed up on Doctor Who?
Oh, let's see. Let me go off the top of my head, just before we swim so far. Brian Blessed was actually on Doctor Who in the 80s. Derek Jacobi was on Doctor Who in the future. Was on in the revival.
He was played the Master, right, for a couple.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure if George Baker was ever on Doctor Who. John Hurt was also in the 50th anniversary day of the Doctor.
The War Doctor, yeah.
Trying to think who else. I think the guy who plays Nero way at the end was also in Doctor Who at one point. I don't remember what role he played. I'm trying to think of all the actors in the series, because the other thing is, like, it was not uncommon at that time for people to go, hey, I want to do Doctor Who, because it's like, you get bored playing Macbeth all the time. You get bored.
And you got nephews.
Yeah, you got kids in your family and other people. Plus, it became a lark, like certain other popular shows become a lark for people to be on and appear on.
Oh, I just remembered one actor who was on Doctor Who that we've seen, the astrologer in episode 2, the one with the weird eyebrow.
Yeah, the Greek.
Yeah, the Greek. That was a gentleman by the name of Kevin Stoney. And he was in 2 60s era stories. He was actually through 2 60s and at least 1 70s. He was in the Dalek Master Plan, which is wiped and you can't find it. He was in The Invasion, which is not available via Tubi, but you can find it because a couple of the episodes are animated, but you can find it on Dailymotion and I think BritBox for pay. And what's funny is in that episode, he plays an electronics genius, and he has a sidekick named Packer. And the best way to describe Packer is he's like in a way he has Jules' enthusiasm, because he wants to kill somebody and do evil stuff, but he just doesn't have the opportunity. So you'll have Kevin Stoney say Packer, And Pack would be like, oh. And Sony was in
right.
Revenge of the Cybermen under heavy makeup.
George was in Doctor Who in 1980. He played Logan for 4 episodes.
What story?
Hold on. 4 episodes. Hold on. Oh, Full Circle.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
So he was on it.
Yeah, I mean, cross-pollination in British television. I mean, just like there is in American television, I'm sure. I mean, that's a reasonable amount of it. You only have so many fine actors to use.
True.
So.
Well, everybody needs a day job.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They trot towards elsewhere at night.
Okay, before we go, who's an actor you want to see on Doctor Who that hasn't been on it?
Richard Simmons.
As the Master.
He'd be so good. Oh, wow.
I'll even take Pauly Shore as Richard Simmons as the Master, actually. That would work.
What actor? Now? John Larroquette.
Yeah.
Why not?
Go there. You could go there with several different character interpretations.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A very nervous scientist. Yeah. I don't know, Gordon, how about you?
Oh, I'll say Aldous Hodge.
Who is Aldous Hodge?
He played Hawkman in Black Adam.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, okay.
He was also Hardison in Leverage, which is, so he was like the nerdy computer guy who was really cool and like did stuff. So yeah, I think he'd be cool in Doctor Who. I don't know what he'd play, but
he'd be great at it.
And he also, as a hobby, makes watches.
A horologist.
Yes. And keep your mind out of the gutter, Jewel. All a horologist is a
We're
person
looking
who
at
makes
you,
watches. Don't, Jewel. Stop it. You've been making inappropriate comments about Caligula and all sorts of things. No, stop it, Jewel. You're out of control.
My American actor for Doctor Who would be Robert Downey Jr.
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
He could probably have his pick of several different character types as well. So
there you go. All right, guys, is there anything you want to add before we go about episode 2?
Tig Notaro.
Yes.
Oh my God, she'd be great. She'd be great. I love her.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as episode 2 goes, no, I think we covered it.
No.
In blood next time, right? So we're going to start getting into it pretty soon.
Oh yeah. So when is episode 3, Jewel?
How's Wednesday?
See you next Wednesday.
No,
Yep,
this Wednesday.
I know. It's a John Landis.
Next
reference.
Wednesday.
2 days from now is what he's saying.
Yeah, 2 days from now.
Another 10:30 appointment?
Yes.
Gordon, is that all right with you?
That will work.
All right.
I'll see you guys Wednesday.
All right.
Good night, guys.
I know.
Oh.
Good night.